Concluded, nothing was discussed except the matter which was identified in the motion to convene in closed session. Only those matters lawfully permitted to be discussed under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act were discussed. And I have a motion to adopt the certification resolution.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Radford?
Yes.
Ms. Hooker?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Ms. Shepherd?
Yes.
Mr. North?
Yes. This is our evening session. We are now reconvening for this session. Item J, public hearing and second reading of ordinances. Number one, the petition of Kevin Manor to obtain a special use permit to operate a short-term rental on approximately 1.23 acres of land zoned R1, low-density residential district, located at 4127 Mockingbird Hill Road, Holland's Magisterial District. Philip Thompson, Director of Planning. Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As you mentioned, this is a special use permit for short-term rental. I'm going to go through this quickly. So the site is located off of Challenger Avenue, off of West Richmond Road, where it intersects with Mockingbird Hill Lane. So it's probably within a mile of Route 460. On a closer look at the property, it is 4127 Mockingbird Hill Road, a little over 1.23 acres. It has a single-family residence, and they're looking for a special use permit for a short-term rental. A couple photos of the outside. To the left is the existing exterior of the home. To the right shows kind of the cul-de-sac at the end of the road, which is property is adjacent to. Access to it is around the back, so it's the lower level. Mr. Manor and his wife live on the upper level, so the short-term rental is just for the lower level, and the access around the back. You see the back of the house. Pretty spread out as far as the adjacent neighbors. Pretty flat and grassed area. A couple photos of the inside. Large living space or great room. That's used for the short-term rental. Kitchen, there's 3 bedrooms. Here are pictures of 2 of them. Here's the third. So there's 3 bedrooms, a bathroom, kitchen, laundry area, as well as a great room. Roughly 2,200 square feet for the short-term rental on the lower level. Our ordinance defines a short-term rental as the provision of a room or space that is suitable or intended for occupancy for dwelling, sleeping, or lodging purposes for a period of fewer than 30 consecutive days in exchange for a charge for the occupancy. We have other short-term rentals that are defined in our ordinance that this doesn't cover. Again, our standards are that they have to get a zoning permit and provide information about the parcel, about the applicant, about the responsible party if it's different than the applicant. It can be, if it changes, any of the information changes by the applicant or responsible party, they have to notify the county within 30 days. It does expire if it changes ownership. The new owner would have to get a new zoning permit, and the zoning administrator could revoke the zoning permit if they're in violation of any of the standards of this code or any other county code. So they're here tonight for a special use permit because in R1 and R2, if it's less than 5 acres, you have to get a special use permit. Surrounding zoning is R1 and R2, so it's a residential area between West Ruritan and East Ruritan in that general vicinity. It is neighborhood conservation, which is kind of identified for established single-family neighborhoods. And again, in conservation, the existing development pattern is encouraged. It is consistent with the neighborhood conservation future land use designation. Planning Commission held a public hearing on March 5th. No citizens spoke. Planning Commission did talk about the house rules. Were there any complaints by neighbors, which there were none. The applicant receiving a letter from the county and then complied with getting the special use permit. The short-term rentals, I think, has been in use for 3 years, roughly. The owner relies on the upper level, as mentioned before. They do use Airbnb as the primary platform to advertise the short-term rental. access to the lower level is used for that short-term rental. When they are applicants on vacation, it's blocked out where nobody can rent the short-term rental, and then they talked about the conditions on the special use permit. The Planning Commission does recommend approval of the special use permit for short-term rental with two conditions: that the short-term rental shall be limited to the lower level of the existing residential dwelling, which is approximately 2,200 square feet, and that the number of overnight guests shall not exceed 6 people. With that, take any questions you have.
Any questions, Mr. Thompson? I have a few questions. Maybe you can answer them.
Sure.
When did the applicant start renting his property?
For short-term rental?
Yes, for
It's been
short-
doing it for about 3 years.
3 years. When did we issue a notice of violation?
Earlier this year, I believe, we sent the notice out. So, we've been looking, we have a staff member that looks at Airbnb and tries to identify sites that we don't have permits for. Sent out the letter. Once he received the letter, he contacted our office immediately and went through the process to become compliant.
Okay. And since receiving the notice, has the applicant continued to use his facility as a short-term rental?
No.
Thank you. All right. Any questions?
Is this property on public water and sewer, or is it on septic?
I think it's well and septic, correct?
Does the septic permit allow for that?
I'm sure he got it for the number of bedrooms, because I think it was a mother-in-law suite before it was,
Okay.
before he rented it out, so.
Any other questions?
No, sir.
Okay. Does the petitioner wish to speak? If you have anything you want to add?
No, not really. I mean, we just.
Come on up to the mic there. Thank you.
We've been doing it for 3 years. Of course, COVID kind of shut us down, so.
Yeah.
And most of our rentals are typically just weekend, and then once a month, we'll get someone that wants it for 7 days. So it's, we're always on the top. We get to say who comes and who doesn't, and, it's easy for us to access and get to them if they're too loud or whatever and shut things down, which has not ever happened, but that's about it.
Okay. Any questions? Thank you very much. At this time, we'll open the public hearing. Does anyone come to speak on this issue? You don't have anything? Okay. Well, with that said, then we will close the public hearing. At this time, there is a motion. I find the proposed special use permit 1 meets the requirements of section 30-19-1 of the Roanoke County Code, and that the proposed special use conforms with the standards set forth in Article 4, use and design standards of the Roanoke County zoning ordinance. Number 2 is in conformance with the Roanoke County Comprehensive Plan, and 3 will have a minimum adverse impact on the surrounding neighborhood and community. I therefore move that we approve the petition to obtain a special use permit with the following conditions. 1, the short-term rental shall be limited to the lower level of the existing residential dwelling, which is approximately 2,200 square feet. 2, the number of overnight guests shall not exceed 6 people. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on this motion? Discussion.
Mr. Chairman, the Board of Supervisors have been struggling with short-term rentals for several years now. And the more I've struggled with this topic, I have to acknowledge my initial reaction is to be negative. I think what we're doing is we are inserting commercial uses into residential areas that under our comprehensive plan we identified as neighborhood conservation. On the other hand, I want to defend the private property rights of an individual landowner and to help them earn some additional income from their valuable investment. I think in this instance, two factors weigh very heavily on me. The first factor is location, and more specifically, the acreage that the applicant has. So it's not like some of the other applications we've had that are on a fifth of an acre or quarter of an acre lot. I think its location at the end of the cul-de-sac, being on 1.23 acres, I think mitigates many of the concerns that I would otherwise have. And then secondly, the fact that the applicant resides in the facility, and he then has an opportunity to mitigate some of the other concerns we've had with trash and traffic and loud noise and late parties. And so I applaud the applicant. He's trying to control the situation. And with those factors in mind, I think I'd be supportive of this application. I know we as a board are going to be meeting with our planning commission to explore how we should approach these kinds of applications in the future. And I think this application might be a good model for us to follow in the future. I think we know that there is some legislation. Is it still before the General Assembly, or has the governor vetoed the bill?
No, there's still two bills before the General Assembly.
So I think we have to wait and see what direction and what limitations, if any, the General Assembly imposes on local governments. But I think this is a good model for us to consider seriously as we go forward.
You know, I look at this too as a good model, because when I first heard about this, I drove by it and I'm like, oh, this is pretty secluded. This is good. And you tonight, or Mr. Thompson told us for 3 years you've been renting this, and I've never heard a complaint from anybody in the neighborhood about it. And you also, you know, instruct people to put their cars in the driveway, I think on the right side. So you're doing a pretty good service, if you will. And it sounds like from the comments that I've seen on Airbnb from people that have stayed there, I didn't see a negative comment.
Thank you.
And if the General Assembly does approve that the governor does sign the bill, then these short-term rentals won't require special use permits, as long as someone's living there like you are on one of the 2 floors, if you will. So that's why this was an easy decision for me to support. Anyone else got any comments? Okay, will the clerk please call a roll?
Mr. Radford?
Yes.
Ms. Hooker?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Ms. Shepherd?
Yes.
Mr. North?
Yes. Thank you. Item K, citizen comments and communications. If any citizen has submitted a form to speak, read the following and then invite the citizens to come forward. We appreciate all who have come to address the board today. Now, we only got one so far, is that correct? That's correct. When your name is called, please come forward, state your name and address, share your comments. You have 3 minutes at the front of the podium, and there's a light system there. When the light changes from green to yellow, please share any concluding comments. When the light changes from yellow to red, your time is ended. So, Mr. Russ, state your name and address, please.
Eric Russ, 562 Midsummer Circle, Vinton, Virginia, 24179. I just really briefly want to touch on the cooperative grant with the Virginia Harm Reduction Coalition. Some of y'all that were in the work session might have seen me about ready to jump out of my seat with excitement. I know some of the people that work with and run the VHRC, and for starters, I think they're a really wonderful bunch of people doing really amazing things. And, you know, for us to put up 10,000 and, you know, 100,000 go towards opioid abatement through the VHRC, I think it's a really amazing deal. Secondly, when we're talking about the spectrometer, one of the things that I didn't hear mentioned that I think is important to public safety is the fact that, and forgive me, my knowledge of this is still a little hazy, but the spectrometer could be used to assist in bad batch notifications. So what that means is basically if there is a batch of drugs that is tainted with xylazine coming out of a certain area, if they notice an uptick in that, they can send out a text to people and be like, hey, we're noticing this, you know, don't take the drugs, come get your stuff tested. You know, we at least want you to remain safe. So I think that's a very important thing to consider also when we look at the use cases for the spectrometer. That's really all I wanted to mention, but I really think that is important. As y'all said, safety is very important, I agree. So thank y'all so very much for your time, and thank you for considering this, and it would be really cool to see it go through.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there being no more speakers, we'll move on to item L. Item L is reports and inquiries of board members. Mr. Radford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to take a moment to recognize former Supervisor Ed Ellswick, who passed away last week. After a long career with General Electric, Ed represented the Windsor Hills District for a one term. During that term, I served the remaining 2 years of Planning Commission, which I'm grateful for. Prior to his service on the board, Ed had a long career in finance with General Electric, and he was one of the first members of his extended family to earn a college degree. Ed lived on Bent Mountain for over 40 years and had many friends up there. I met him while he, probably in 2019, 2018, a couple times at the Bramilton Center up there. He had a good attitude and was very easy to talk with. He also had quite a reputation for parties he would throw at his home called Utopia. It attracted the attention of our police department every now and then. But it all was a great time. He understood everyone. It was great to see him. Ed's originally from Kentucky, and like everyone from Kentucky, he loved basketball. So there will be a celebration of life sometime in mid-April. I missed the date, at Okies South. As the current Board of Supervisor member for Windsor Hills District, I would like to offer the county flag to his family for his 4 years of public service to our county. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. That's a nice
Nice
commentary.
gesture.
Thank you.
Ms. Shepherd.
Good evening. I've got actually several things I wanted to touch base on. One is I wanted to thank the Mount Pleasant community for allowing me to attend their community meeting again this past week. Also, I wanted to thank Robin's Nest. They had a grand opening in Vinton, which I also was able to attend. But more important than any of those is I would like to make a request of staff, but let me first give you some background information regarding that. As a representative for the Vinton Magisterial District, for some time I have been particularly excited about the development of the Vinton Business Center. For those of our citizens who are not familiar with this center, the town of Vinton and county each acquired half interest in the 6 contiguous parcels, which is approximately 65 acres in size, located adjacent to the Blue Ridge Parkway, and it's also close to the Vinton Central Business District, otherwise known to Vinton neighbors as McDonald's Farm right off of Hardy Road. One of our valued businesses, Cardinal Glass, which is a manufacturer of glass products, is already located in the center. In 2021, the town and county conveyed their interest in the center to the county's Economic Development Authority in order for the EDA to help facilitate the marketing of the sites for economic development purposes and the conveyance of sites to interested purchasers. I would like to request that our economic development staff work together with our procurement staff to issue a request for proposals or to otherwise propose new marketing strategies for the center. Specifically, I would like to explore 2 options. One, developing a portion of the center as a residential development. In Vinton, we are in need of housing. The other is to refurbish the existing historic barn, which was actually built by a German immigrant years ago, and transforming that into a meeting center or some other form of business space. These proposals and strategies could then be shared with members of the Economic Development Authority. The sites have a lot to offer, and I look forward to being able to review the staff's ideas. And I want to thank the staff in advance for your efforts in doing this.
Anything else?
Nope, that is all for me.
Thank you. Mr. Mahoney.
A couple things, Mr. Chairman. back on the 13th of March, I attended the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy Committee meeting. I think the board has designated me to be its representative for the SEDS committee. The SEDS committee is part of the Regional Commission. One of the concerns I've had for the last couple of years is that we have a list of projects, and I was just trying to look now and I couldn't count the number, but with all the different localities that are part of the Regional Commission, we have, I think, over 120 projects that are listed. And I understand why each locality puts these projects in the mix, because you have to be recognized through your SEDS committee in order to qualify for the federal EDA grants, not the local, but the federal EDA grants. But 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I guess, when I got on the committee, I suggested not to eliminate or cut out any jurisdiction's project, but see if we could come up with a list of maybe 10 projects that would be the top projects that would have more of a regional impact. And there was some weeping and gnashing of teeth to get to that point. But we did go through a process. We came up with a list of projects. I think for us, I think with Mr. North's leadership, because Mr. North was on the SEDS committee before me, I think we added the expansion of the airport and the runway as being one of those projects. And again, that's a regional project that affects all of us. From Roanoke County's perspective, we also have the Woodhaven site, which again is a regional project with Roanoke City, Salem, and us. And also Explore, again, a regional project with Roanoke County and Bedford. So we attempted to identify those. So the point of all that is we're going through this process again, and we did have representatives from our Economic Development Department with me attending that meeting. And so she and I talked about how we should probably look and revisit our list of projects, because we have a whole long laundry list ourselves. Many of them are transportation projects. But I think it's an opportunity to kind of revisit that and try to refocus on what our regional priorities are. I think it'll be difficult because everybody has their own specific locality project that they want to advance. And I was trying to push a more regional approach. Secondly, I think 4 board members attended on Friday the 15th, the Salem-Roanoke County Regional Chamber meeting, where they awarded all sorts of prizes to various local businesses. And I think it's very well attended, and I think we all had a great time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Hooker, I'm not forget you.
He was
It's a
getting ready to
good-
take
I
off.
know, I know. The good news is,
didn't have
though,
anything to
Mr.
report.
Chairman, is that I did not have anything to report, so it's
Well,
good.
Mr. Mahoney stepped in front of you. didn't
That's
he?
right.
I
If you had nothing to report, then
He
you...
did, he did pass
passed
it
it to
to you,
me.
Paul.
Well, I'm sorry about that.
That's
It
all right.
happens. It's what happens when you eat too much. Okay, so on Monday, this week, the Roanoke Valley Allegheny Regional Commission staff, consisting of Jeremy Holmes and Tori Williams in Transportation, and I met with the Joint Legislative Audit and Review Commission, known as JLARC staff, to provide feedback on their study of additional opportunities to raise revenue for planned congestion related to improvements on I-81. Delegate Austin initiated this analysis in 2023 in a joint resolution to establish a study that passed the General Assembly and is working with stakeholders along the corridor to explore this topic. Now, there's 3 planning commissions along the corridor, so JLARC's reached out to each one. We discussed concerns over the long-term sustainability of the motor fuels taxes that fund the I-81 projects. We also discussed the feasibility of P3 public-private contracts. We also asked for future volume projections for the corridor, especially truck traffic, the next 10 years, and the cost benefits of adding 3 lanes to the entire corridor, as well as the current list of priority improvements through 2033, are we going to have enough money? And the report is scheduled to be completed by the end of this year, around November, December, I believe. So we'll find out what the consensus is along the corridor. Quite frankly, I think we've got good projects identified. I think it's going to be a monumental task to do the whole corridor in both directions, 650 miles round trip with 3 lanes. The projects that we have are projects that are in the high-density corridor areas where we have congestion. And one thing that I will tell you is this: if there are 3 lanes put along the corridor in certain locations as the plan proposes, if trucks would just stay in the right lane, it would benefit a lot of people in terms of fluidity. You can see going up the mountain to Christiansburg, the trucks stay for the most part in the right lane. Occasionally, one might be passing another truck in the middle lane, but
Only
traffic
if they're
moves
empty.
very, very well. What's that?
Only if they're empty.
Yeah, well, in any instance, it's going to be challenging to do the whole corridor, no matter whether it's public-private or whether it's state and federal funds. And you can't keep on taxing too much of the fuels, because one day there won't be any fuels, it'll all be electric vehicles. So we'll see what they have to say. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion?
Second.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Radford?
Yes?
Ms. Hooker?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Ms. Shepherd?
Yes.
Mr. North?
Yes. Adjourn.